I chair the Senate Committee on Environmental Conservation, and we are joined by Senator Helming, who is a minority ranker on housing. The Senate is still in session as we speak, so more members may be showing up. We'll introduce them and allow them to speak. So we're going to go back and forth. Every member will have a minute or two to talk about their budget priorities. This is a formality that we do every year to kick off the budget process. And with that, we'll kick it back to the Assembly.
Thank you very much. We have, let me just say that we're pleased to be here and to point out that in regard to the environment, we have major funding issues that are going to need further discussion. Obviously, the Environmental Protection Fund and our rejection of the executive proposal to divert $25 million from the EPF for personal services. And obviously, we want to be sure that water infrastructure funding is another key area, and we are committed to seeing it restored to the $500 million point that it has been in. We have the following agencies at this table, and it's a long list. Not all of them are as big as the others. The Adirondack Park Agency, the Department of Agriculture and Markets, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Olympic Regional Development Authority, the Energy Research and Development Authority, the Department of Public Service, the Division of Housing and Community Renewal, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the Hudson River Greenway Communities Council, and the Hudson River Park Trust. We are confident that working with our partners in the Senate, that we will work together with the governor to come out with an on-time budget that will satisfy the needs of the people of the state of New York. And with that, I will ask if any of my colleagues wish to make a few statements, and we will then alternate. So we'll go to Linda Rosenthal and then back to the Senate, and we'll alternate so that those opening remarks can be made.
Thank you very much. Just a really ditto to what everything Chair Glick said. We in the Senate side, too, are looking forward to negotiations with our colleagues in the Assembly and the governor for an on-time budget. We, too, reject the $25 million from the EPF. We reject the cuts to the different programs in the EPF. We reject the cuts to the clean water funding, and we're actually all looking forward to different ways to expand that funding. That's so necessary. We may have slightly different ideas on how we can use that money, but they're both great ideas. We can find some common ground there. We also look forward to talking about the New York Heat Act, the RAPID Act, and a number of other initiatives as we go through the next 2 weeks. So with that, we'll turn it back to the Assembly and look forward to comments from colleagues.
Hi, Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. I'm chair of the Housing Committee. This year, like every year, is a big housing year, but we are certainly striving to get a supply side, labor side, tenant protection side agreement among all the parties so we can be sure to protect tenants across the state, to increase the supply of housing, particularly affordable housing, and to ensure that labor is paid a fair wage. Those discussions are ongoing, and I am hopeful that all will come together to produce a good agreement that we all can support. I want to add that the governor did cut a lot of the aid to localities funds, the Housing Access Voucher Program, which is very important to include, the Homeowner Protection Program, which $40 million helps people who are losing their who will not be able to pay their mortgage, will lose their homes, first-time homeowner assistance, and land banks. All of those are part of a healthy state approach to housing, to keeping people, homeowners and tenants in their homes. So I look forward to an on-time budget with a lot of great things. Thank you.
All right. Been joined by Senator Brian Kavanaugh, Chair of the Housing Committee, Senator Michelle Hinchey, Chair of the Agriculture Committee. We'll go in order of folks who got here. We'll go to Senator Helming for her brief remarks, and then we'll turn it back to the Assembly side. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Harckham, and thank you, Assemblywoman Glick. I love your optimism talking about delivering an on-time budget. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share the position of the Senate Republican Conference on agriculture, environmental conservation, and the housing budget proposals. These are areas that touch every single New Yorker and are extremely important. But I want to just make a general comment about the budget process. It needs to be more transparent. We're talking about a final spending plan that is going to land somewhere north of $233 billion. New York's spending plan will be one of the highest, if not the highest, budget in the entire United States of America. And those concerned taxpayers and even legislators who are interested in following the entire budget process, they're out of luck. Unless our state leaders reverse course following the completion of these subcommittee meetings, the budget discussions move behind closed doors and will be hidden from the public's view. On agriculture, the recently released 2022 USDA Census of Agriculture should serve as a wake-up call for all of us of just how important it is that our state government supports the viability and success of our family farms. Since the last ag census in 2017, New York State has lost nearly 2,800 farms and 364,000 acres of farmland. A significant portion of the decline is in dairy farming, an industry that is absolutely essential to our economy and to the health and well-being of all New Yorkers. We all know that students who are hungry struggle to focus and engage in the classroom, and they tend to be at greater risk for physical and mental health problems. Our Republican conference supports the Healthy Schools meals and the additional funding for Nourish New York. We'd like to work together to open opportunities for more organizations to participate in the Nourish New York program. And we're also seeking clarification that farmers can sell whole and 2% milk through the Nourish New York program. We also support the added funding for programs including crop research, farmland preservation, and for farm worker housing. We are asking that the New York Farmers Refundable Investment Tax Credit be expanded to include new and renovated farm worker housing, and for continued support of our future farmers, whether that's resources for Ag in the Classroom, our Cornell Cooperative Extensions, and of course, the future farmers of America. We all know the challenges our farmers face are mounting, from the burdensome state mandates and regulations to higher production, labor, fuel, and feed costs. I would ask my colleagues to be mindful of these realities and ensure that we're not only providing the necessary financial incentives to support our family farms, but also that the policies we pursue do not make it harder for them to do business in New York State. For example, our farmers have major concerns with the push for electric, zero-emission agricultural vehicles when the technology does not yet exist. Our farmers are partners in protecting our environment, and we need to be realistic and work with them on sensible solutions. I want to touch really briefly on the extended producer responsibility. I want to thank Senator Harckham for listening to the concerns of many of our food producers and people in the packaging industry and making amendments to his bill. We recognize that food producers and those who package food products, including dairy products, follow very strict safety guidelines and quality control measures, as well as numerous state and federal regulations. I'm hopeful, Senator Harckham, that we can consider additional amendments to protect our employers and jobs while also protecting the environment.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to
Moving
the
on to
Assembly.
environmental conservation.
Can you please keep it very brief? We each have the same amount of time to speak.
So Senator Harkema, I will point out that I am the sole Republican here from the Minority Conference, and we're covering major topics: agriculture, environmental conservation, and housing. So moving on to environmental
Well,
conservation.
other members of the conference could have come. There are other members on here.
There's one member appointed, and we have one alternate. That's
right.
all that's on the list.
Please just try to expedite. Thank you.
Our Senate Republican Conference supports the restoration of $250 million for the Clean Water Infrastructure Act. Our local municipalities and counties, particularly in our smaller communities and more rural areas, have a great need for infrastructure improvements essential to economic growth and housing development. We know that access to fresh water is one of the top selling points for our region when it comes to attracting new businesses. We need to continue to invest in water quality improvement projects, flood mitigation, farmland protection, combating harmful algal blooms, and I appreciate these increased dollars in the Senate One House. I also appreciate the efforts made by the Senate and our state agencies in response to concerns I know that I raised during the budget hearings, as did many of my colleagues, with regard to ensuring grant funding opportunities are more accessible to our smaller communities. I would ask that these efforts continue so that we can ensure that our smaller communities and counties are not inadvertently placed at a competitive disadvantage. Our conference would ask that policy proposals, including the RAPID Act and the New York HEAT Act, be removed from the budget document, and that the authority to utilize eminent domain or the forceful taking of private property be removed from the RAPID Act. Same with the ability to develop on previously conserved lands. That should be removed. We've all seen the results of the Siena College Research Institute's latest Upstate New York Business Leader Survey. Survey respondents said a series of actions under the state CLCPA focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions are seen as having far more negative than positive impacts on businesses. When we consider these policies, we absolutely need to consider the environment, but we also need to consider the impact on local jobs and on consumers. In a state that already has the highest total tax burden in the nation and a business climate that ranks among the worst in the nation. And let us be mindful of the survey results, which also showed 81% of business leaders say that state government is a detriment to doing business in New York. Moving on to the final topic that I have, housing. While our Senate Republican Conference supports increased investments in programs such as our local land banks and farm worker housing, we are deeply concerned with the inclusion of policy proposals that include the premise of good cause eviction. And we do not support the majority's rejection of the 421A or replacement program. We would like to see the infill homes proposal expanded to include smaller cities. We'd also like to see funding included for an affordable housing relief fund available to non-public property owners. This fund would allow owners of affordable units to make needed capital investments to maintain our current affordable housing stock and provide tenants with improved units and amenities. We would ask that policy proposals, such as the New York Housing Opportunity Corporation, be removed from the budget and brought through the committee process so that they may be discussed and debated in the open, and so our municipalities, developers, and small businesses can have their voices heard. We acknowledge there are varying opinions and needs when it comes to housing. There should be a seat for everyone at the table. We should protect landlords and small property owners along with tenants. We should support new housing construction with incentives as opposed to mandates. We should facilitate infrastructure investments, and we should preserve home rule and protect local decision-making. Under Part CCC of the New York Housing Opportunity Corporation, the decision of a local municipality can be overridden by the state-appointed board. This is simply unacceptable. Strengthening our communities, helping local employers fill jobs, and attracting new business investment all require affordable homeownership options for workers and their families, from firefighters and police officers to nurses and direct support professionals to manufacturing technicians. Our state has the lowest home ownership rate of any state in the nation. We need to work together to ensure the American dream is still within our reach in our communities. We support the Olympic Regional Development Authority $70 million in capital projects, and we ask for inclusion for resources for the private ski areas for the upgrades, modernization, and renovation of their facilities. And finally, on parks, we support we support what has been included in the budget and ask for additional funding to study the need to dredge the state boat launch on Canandaigua Lake at the north end, one of the most popular and highly used boat launches in the state of New York. Senator Harckham, Assemblywoman Glick, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will try to ensure that everybody gets an ample time, but we also are mindful of the limits that we have placed. And so with that, we will hear from our Chair on Agriculture, Donna Lupardo.
Thank you very much. So I think we're at a good starting point, as usual, on agriculture. And I say as usual, I mean certainly within the last few years, I think we've made some significant headway with our colleagues and in understanding, having a much better understanding of where our food comes from and how difficult it is to get food to market, the climate conditions the food is being grown in, and the stories behind the actual farmers and the processors and the people at every point along the line in the supply chain. As you know, COVID has certainly raised a lot of awareness around that, and we've taken full advantage of it. I think working closely with my Senate colleague and certainly the ranker in the Assembly, we have a pretty good understanding of the types of investments that we need to make at Cornell for the research and development, for education and outreach, the great agricultural development programs we have, the kind of capital that Ag Markets has requested. It may not be in our budget, but we've made it very clear that cooperative extension is something that has to be fully funded, and farmland protection, and many of the items that have already been mentioned. So we are going to do basic restorations, and we're going to make additions where we can. But there is one area, if I may take a point of privilege to express my frustration over the plight of our cannabis farmers and processors. While they grew earnestly in 2022, they wound up being in a situation that was beyond their control, where they were, by and large, unable to sell their product. It went bad. They lost a lot of money. This was the same group of people who grew for the CBD market that crashed. And we have an obligation, all of us, to make it right with those folks. So working together with all of our colleagues, this is a group of dedicated farmers who are in need of our assistance to get through a very difficult financial period, along with the processors as well. So I'm looking forward to the work we're doing here. I feel very good about the team that we have assembled on agriculture, and I'm very pleased with the awareness and sympathy we are getting from people around the state about what our farmers are going through. It's not easy, as has been pointed out, and I think we can do better by them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Back to the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While we're on the topic of agriculture, let's go to the Senate Agriculture Chair, Senator Michelle Hinchey.
Thank you, Senator Harckham. I echo a lot of the sentiments of my colleague and fellow Agriculture Chair, Assemblymember Lupardo. The importance of agriculture has never been more prevalent. With the impacts of the climate crisis, not just across our country, but across the globe, the Northeast, specifically New York, is set up to become the breadbasket of our country once again. And so preserving our farmland and protecting our farm businesses is of paramount concern, especially when so many of the factors and the challenges that they're facing are global and geopolitical. And so some of the things I think we are in a really good spot starting off in this budget. We have really strong language in this budget to protect farmland, both from, on the environmental side as well as in the renewable energy projects or just energy projects generally. We cannot exchange a climate crisis for a food crisis, and so making sure that we're protecting farmland in this space is incredibly important. We've also continued the streak of having the best budget for agriculture 4 years in a row, I believe, in our state's history, at least in our recent history. And that is a feat, including significant investments in our One House budget for farm viability, which is an important organization for research in agriculture. We're working to restore them back to 2009, pre-2009 levels, which is something that's incredibly important and will support agriculture for the future. We've also done a number of significant capital investments for our dairy farmers and also for hemp processing, which I will hope to see in the final budget, and the expansions of those projects. And I also echo my colleagues' sentiments on the need to support our cannabis farmers. We have done some of that work in this budget. We have to do everything we can to keep it there. We need these farmers to stay in business. We asked them to grow. We want them to be the growers when even more stores continue to open. So I'm excited about the future, excited about the work that we've done. We have more to do, but I think this is a really good starting point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now go to our Chair of Parks and Tourism and Arts Council. I want to commend Assemblymember O'Donnell for his strong defense, not only of parks, but also of our arts community, which has had its own struggle through the pandemic.
Thank you, Deborah. I have nothing to add.
Well, we want to thank the Assembly member more than anyone for his concise comment. We understand that this is the centennial of the parks, so we're all excited to make sure that we support the parks as we go forward, because more and more New Yorkers found out how much they love their parks as a result of the pandemic. Back to the Senate.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll switch back to housing with the Senate Housing Chair, Senator Brian Kavanagh.
Thank you, Senator Harckham and Assemblymember Glick for chairing this, and for all my colleagues. It's great, particularly, to be with our Assembly Housing Chair, Linda Rosenthal, and the ranker on our Housing Committee, Senator Helming. So this is a very big year for housing. We have had now a process over the last couple of years where we've been working toward a truly comprehensive solution to what is really a series of interlocking crises throughout the state. It's a crisis of affordability, it's a crisis of housing supply, and it's a crisis of homelessness, and a crisis of excessive evictions, which are wreaking havoc in the lives of individual families and also whole communities. The Senate One House proposal is a truly broad proposal to ensure that we really are being comprehensive in our response to that. So it includes major protections of tenants and homeowners by changing statutes and adding rights. That includes commitment to the principle of good cause eviction, which, for those who aren't sure what that is the principle that one should not be evicted from one's home without a good reason. It also establishes, we did a lot of work last year on deed theft, and we are joining the governor in calling for additional protections, including criminal penalties when people are taking people's homes, which are often, of course, their life's accumulation of resources, and often has great sentimental value for them as well. And we are codifying a program. We've had a fight every year about the homeowner protection program. We're proposing to codify that program so it is a matter of statute that program be included and funded each year. We are adding, in order to give effect to those rights, we're adding a great deal of support for legal services to prevent evictions and foreclosures and housing instability and discrimination. The Senate proposed add on combined on all those things is $130 million. We are proposing to include a new Office of Civil Representation. This is an issue we've worked on with the Assembly in the past, and fund the operational costs of that effort. We're proposing a total of about $80 million in legal services to prevent evictions, to represent tenants facing that threat. And we're also proposing $40 million for the homeowner protection program and a doubling of the fair housing money that is in the hands of the housing agency. We've got huge proposals on rental assistance, the housing access voucher program, and a new proposal to ensure that emergency assistance is available when people are facing evictions. We've got many proposals that are intended to increase the housing supply. Just to note, my colleague, Senator Helming, said that we are rejecting the governor's proposal on 421A. We are expressing in our resolution a commitment to figuring out 421A, both the existing program and a new program in the context of a housing deal. We've got many large capital programs that we're proposing and several proposals that are intended to address land use and other obstacles to housing, including, again, conceptual support for faith-based housing program. And I'm getting the hook from my colleagues, but just to say once again, this is a real opportunity to transform housing policy, and we are ready to step forward and do that.
Thank you, Senator.
We are going to hear from the ranking member, Mr. Tague.
Is this working?
Yep, just
Well, first of all, Chair Glick and Chair Harkam, thank you very much. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Assembly Minority Conference. And I appreciate the chance to share our thoughts on the budget proposals that we have seen and the process that we'll be going through over the next few weeks. The good news is that Senator Helming hit all the points, so I'll be very brief. But we do want to say that these budget conference committees provide the public with necessary budget transparency that we have always been supportive of. The following are some of the priorities and concerns of our conference. First of all, we are very pleased with the majority that they have seen fit to restore $250 million in the Clean Water Infrastructure Act funding. Hopefully, we can negotiate this level of funding into the FY25 enacted budget. The New York Food Insecurity, Farm Resiliency, and Poverty Act that was supported conference-wide by the Assembly minority, which would integrate Nourish New York into a broader, almost $40 million effort to revitalize New York agriculture, as well as strengthen the state's food supply chain and promote economic development along with processing. And finally, let's get whole and 2% milk back in our school systems. The Farm Labor Wage Board's decision to lower the farm labor overtime threshold to 40 hours, we feel could mean a disaster for many of our upstate farms, further eroding an essential industry which feeds all of New Yorkers. Our farmers need help. And my friends, this isn't what it looks like to help them. Upstate residents are suffering the consequences of lost farmland, ruined view sheds, and potential environmental disposal hazards associated with wind and solar development, all without the meaningful local input or control. I'm sorry, my friends, but this just isn't right. Upstate regions should not have to bear the additional consequences of expedited transmission sightings, something that is envisioned in the governor's proposed Rabbit Act. This should not be done without local control or input. And I agree, housing is a crucial issue impacting all New Yorkers and is a major driving factor for people leaving the Empire State. The Assembly minority believes that addressing affordability and access to housing would encourage more New Yorkers to stay. As we continue to negotiate this budget, which will be one of the most important budget processes we have ever partaken in, we should ensure that negotiations are transparent, open to the public, and negotiated on a five-way basis. Chair Glick, thank you very much. Chair Harkam, thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank all members of the subcommittee. Obviously, there are many important issues that will be taken up. There are a lot of agreements between the two houses. There are some differences, but all of those things will be worked out, and we will be returning at the call of the major, this General Conference Committee, but we look forward to working together for a responsible and on-time budget, and we will be back at the call of the General Conference Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.